Okay, let's unpack this. What happens when someone who wasn't just, an outsider looking in, but was actually part of a system? What happens when they decide to turn around and speak out against it?
Yeah, it really changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it? It's not the usual script.
Not at all. An insider shifting to the outside, well, it carries a different kind of weight.
It absolutely does. They have different knowledge, maybe a deeper understanding of the mechanics, and yeah, potentially different vulnerabilities too.
And that specific dynamic, that insider-turned-critic story, is exactly what this deep dive is about today.
Mm,
We're exploring the complex and pretty widely discussed case of Mohammed Ziane in Morocco.
And we're drawing specifically from the analysis given in one particular source, a YouTube video.
Right, the title is Utso Kusho. Okay, a Sengxing the Anikar Sengxinchon will take Sony XZ. And that video, it offers a specific viewpoint, a particular perspective on Ziane's journey and the events around his legal battles. So our goal here is really to unpack what this source presents, the key events, the accusations it details, and the sort of broader questions it raises about his trajectory from insider to critic.
Yeah, and the implications the source sees for dissent in the country generally.
Because, as this source really highlights, Ziane wasn't your typical activist, was he? Not someone who spent their whole life critiquing from the margins.
No, not at all. For a long time, he was deeply embedded. The analysis in the video paints him as someone very much inside the system, what the source calls the maxim.
That term you hear often referring to the sort of established governing power structure in Morocco.
Exactly. And Ziane, he was a former lawyer, a known figure, and importantly, a former minister of human rights. He knew the ropes, how things worked from the inside.
The source's view is that for a long time he wasn't really an opponent, maybe more like an instrument of the state, involved in sensitive cases, had connections, inside knowledge.
Yeah, the video even uses that phrase, mufo, like a son of the house, to describe how integrated he once was, according to their analysis.
And that's what makes the shit so interesting, as described in this video. The source suggests that at some point, Ziane's public statements started to, seriously cross lines. They started to annoy the system.
Right, and here's where the source says things got really critical. It points to Ziane speaking out about some heavy stuff.
Like this, what specifically?
Alleged corruption in security services, claims of torture and detention, what he saw as manipulation in the judiciary, media smear campaigns against opponents.
And even briefly touching on aspects of the king's private life.
Yes, which the source identifies as a huge red line in Morocco, a major one.
So what's striking in the source's perspective is why these comments hit so hard.
Well, because it wasn't just any human rights defender or journalist saying these things. It was an insider, someone who'd operated within the system, knew its workings. His words were harder to just brush off.
Right.
The analysis suggests the system, maybe used to dealing with external critics, was suddenly facing someone who, wasn't easily intimidated, wasn't staying silent.
And who, from the source's viewpoint, seemed like he had nothing left to lose.
Exactly. The source argues that these kinds of systems, authoritarian ones as it describes Morocco's, are often most uncomfortable with former insiders who break ranks.
Why is that, according to the video?
Because these people, they know how decisions get made, who makes them, and they often have a certain public credibility that makes it tough to just dismiss or discredit them in the usual ways. People are curious, what might someone from inside reveal.
Makes sense.
And the analysis claims that when Ziane started making these sharp criticisms, the state's response wasn't mainly like a political counter-argument. Instead, the video argues they went after him through the courts and specifically targeted his personal life.
Okay.
The source's interpretation is clear. This was meant to wreck his credibility, smear his image, paint him not as a legitimate political voice, but as someone, morally flawed or corrupt.
So the source sees this as not just a challenge to authority, but also to the image the state tries to project.
Precisely. Especially that image cultivated in recent decades of being, open, modern, respecting rights, free expression.
And when a former minister publicly claims the opposite?
According to the video, it fundamentally challenges that narrative. It hits differently.
Which brings us to a core question the source raises. Is Ziane just a one-off, an isolated case?
Or could he be, as the source speculates, the first sign of a new pattern? People who are inside the state structure starting to voice dissent.
Will we see more insiders breaking ranks, speaking out against what they see as injustice or silence? That's the question the source leaves hanging.
Yeah, let's maybe rewind a bit and trace the timeline the source lays out. The video suggests Ziane's talk started shifting, getting noticeably more critical around 2016.
Yeah, 2016. What was happening then?
Well, the source connects it to the rise of the Iraq Rif protests, that big social movement in the Rif region.
Right, I remember that.
The source says Ziane began defending the movement's goals and criticizing the state's security-heavy response. He notably defended key figures tied to the Iraq.
Like Nasser Zefzafi.
Exactly, seen as a symbol of the movement. And also journalists Tufik Butrin and a woman named Afaf Bernani.
Bernani alleged police fabricated evidence in a case linked to Bushnan, right?
Correct. And the video suggests that because Ziane was defending her so strongly in the Bushran case and making frequent media appearances with these criticisms, the pressure started building.
How did that pressure manifest initially?
In July 2020, an appeals court in Rabat suspended him from practicing law for a year. The reason cited, reportedly, was that his arguments went outside the context of legal defense.
And then?
Then, in March 2022, according to the source, that suspension got extended to 3 years. But the legal pressure, as the video describes it, went way beyond his professional license. It escalated significantly.
Okay, this is where the story, based on this source, takes a really personal, dramatic turn.
Yeah. November 2020, a sensationalist website publishes a video, claimed it was filmed in a hotel.
What did it allegedly show?
It supposedly showed a man, after a shower, with a woman. And the website explicitly claimed this was Ziane and a police officer he'd previously defended back in 2017 in a harassment case.
Wow. But the source mentions the quality.
Right. The source highlights the video quality was poor, images unclear, yet this media attack on Ziane kicked off.
How did Ziane respond?
According to the source, he responded very publicly. He accused Abdelatif Hamouchi, the director of National Security and Internal Intelligence, of being behind the video, of orchestrating a smear campaign.
That's a huge accusation to make.
Absolutely. And it's that accusation, according to the video's analysis, that triggered a major escalation. The Ministry of Interior filed a complaint against Ziane.
Okay.
The judicial police in Casablanca then summoned Ziane repeatedly, the source says, 15 times, questioning him on a whole range of things, many of which, the video claims, weren't even directly related to that initial complaint.
And what came out of all that questioning?
What followed, according to the source, was this sudden, extensive list of charges against Ziane, 11 charges in total.
11? Like what?
Things like insulting public officials, defaming women, inciting against COVID-19 measures, adultery, sexual harassment, even setting a bad example for children. A real mix.
And the outcome?
In February 2022, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison based on those charges. He appealed and remained free while the appeal was pending.
But the source notes something unusual about the appeal process itself.
Yes, a really crucial detail, according to the video. When the date for the appeals hearing came up November 7th, 2022, the source claims neither Ziane nor his lawyer got a proper summons.
So they didn't attend.
They didn't attend, and the court just proceeded to rule on the case without them, in their absence.
And then?
Just a couple weeks later, November 21st, 2022, Mohammed Ziane was arrested.
So in the source's view, he goes from former minister to one of the country's most prominent political detainees. Just like that.
That's the picture the video paints. It presents this case as sort of exhibit A of a pattern it believes is common in Morocco.
Which pattern is that?
Using criminal charges, often ones related to personal conduct, morals as a way to target opponents and discredit them publicly. The source argues Ziane isn't the first. It mentions cases involving journalists, other politicians.
Facing charges ranging from espionage, money laundering, to things like rape or human trafficking.
Exactly. Things designed, the source argues, to damage reputation severely.
But Ziane's legal issues, according to the source, didn't stop with those 11 charges, right? There was another major case.
That's right. Another one specifically targeting him with a really serious accusation. Alleged embezzlement of public funds meant for political parties.
Okay, tell us about that one based on the source.
The video explains this case started from an internal fight within the Moroccan Liberal Party, where Ziane was the Secretary General.
Right.
After disagreements with some members, notably a guy named Ishak Chouria filed a complaint. He accused Ziane of improperly using state money given to the party.
Specifically, funds for the 2015 elections.
Yes. That public money is meant for parties to do legitimate political things, train members, run campaigns, that sort of stuff.
And the accusation was?
That the money wasn't used for those approved purposes, and that Ziane basically acted outside the rules governing party finances.
Now, what does the source find particularly questionable about this case?
The procedural path it took. The video argues very strongly that the correct legal way to audit party funds and figure out if rules were broken should have been through the Higher Council of Accounts.
That's the official body for this.
Yes, it's the constitutionally mandated body responsible for overseeing and auditing political party finances in Morocco. That's their job.
But the source claims it didn't happen here.
Correct. The source claims this established process via the Higher Council of Accounts was just bypassed, which leads the video's analysis and many observers it cites to question how this whole thing got started and sent straight to the judiciary.
So the state reportedly claimed Ziane couldn't account for over 1 million dirhams. But the source's question is, where was the official auditor in all this?
Exactly. They're the ones empowered to audit and, if needed, refer cases of financial misconduct to the courts. Not, according to the video, the Ministry of Interior or just a disgruntled party member settling a score.
And the video notes that the complaint was filed by the party's new Secretary General, who was in direct conflict with Ziane.
Yes, suggesting, in the source's view, that this internal political squabble was basically weaponized into a criminal case.
And there's another detail the source points out.
A striking one, yeah. Ziane apparently returned the entire disputed amount later, the full million-plus dirhams.
But the trial went ahead anyway.
It proceeded regardless, according to the source, and resulted in significant sentences, initially 5 years, later reduced to 3 on appeal, but still substantial prison time.
So this case, in the source's analysis, really forces some fundamental questions.
It does. Is the goal here a genuine, across-the-board fight against corruption?
Or does it become, as the video suggests, more about selecting who gets held accountable and maybe who gets a pass based on other, perhaps political, factors?
And critically, is the judiciary just upholding the law? Or is it, in some instances, as argued here, being used as a tool in political or personal conflicts? These are the hard questions the source poses.
So what's the bigger picture here? According to this video's perspective, what does it all add up to?
Well, the source suggests Ziane's case isn't really unique. It argues that lots of voices face consequences when they express opinions that challenge the official story.
Journalists, human rights activists.
Yeah, the source claims they face a similar pattern. Similar legal pressure, similar language used against them, similar kinds of charges often used as pretexts.
The video concludes that the way cases are started and pursued often seems questionable. The charges can be numerous and complex.
But the underlying goal, the source argues, is consistently the same: deterrence, silencing critical voices.
The problem in this analysis isn't just about Ziane himself, then.
No, the source sees it as a much more dangerous trend, one that risks, in its view, taking the country back towards dynamics similar to the years of lead.
That historical period known for intense political repression.
Exactly. Maybe using more modern tools like legal maneuvers or media campaigns, but with a similar underlying mentality, according to this source.
And the source's final point is quite pointed.
It's powerful, yeah. It argues that the state, which should be protecting freedom of expression and the right to disagree,
is instead, from their perspective, using the law itself to shut down voices and, intimidate society more broadly.
Yeah.
So this analysis really leaves us, and you, the listener, with a pretty significant question to mull over. Given the patterns and the specific cases described in this particular video source, is there genuine hope for fostering an environment that actually respects diverse viewpoints and fundamental rights?
Or are we perhaps looking at a climate where people who might want to express dissent feel this, pervasive fear, constantly wondering if maybe, just maybe, they could be next?